Hello Wolfpack. I wanted to make a video on EOS because a lot of people think that EOS is a dead coin, and it is basically dying, right? On CoinMarketCap at the beginning of this year, EOS was basically in the top 10, right? Almost at least. If not in the top 10, I can't quite remember. And now it is slumped all the way down to around the 40th position and still slumping. So, look, I can understand why people are skeptical about this coin. I myself, to a certain extent, am skeptical as well. However, I have the objectivity and the non-biased opinion, and the ability to spot things that a lot of other people wouldn't bother to look at. And that's what you get when you become an analyst in the charts, right? And on EOS right now, I've been able to spot a bit of a hidden build-up, right? A bit of a hidden structure that a lot of people probably wouldn't notice in EOS, and I think it looks pretty good, right? We can see that on EOS, if we try and connect a trend line from the bottom to the top here, or where we are currently, it doesn't really work out too well. And a lot of people have been disencouraged by that, and they've removed that, and they've said it's invalidated. But, what we can actually do is we can bring this line up to the daily closes of each day, right? So we can bring it to the daily close there. And then we can zoom out and we can bring it to each daily close, not counting the wicks, just the closes. And we can see that EOS is actually forming quite an interesting pattern, right? We can see if we bring that to the close there, what we can see is EOS has had 1, 2, let's keep going here, 3, almost 4, 5 retests of a long-term trend line that it has been forming since December last year. So about a year now, right? That's hidden. A lot of people wouldn't have seen that. They would draw it from the wicks, and from the wicks, it doesn't really make an awful lot of sense. It works kind of to a certain extent, but it doesn't really work as well as you do it from the closes. You have to keep into mind and keep into account here that wicks aren't really too, telling of a trend. Okay, wicks, they're interesting because you do count them in formations, however, but we can understand that there's a lot of manipulation in the cryptocurrency market. There's a lot of price action that happens that wouldn't necessarily happen naturally. And so counting the wicks on longer term trends is quite risky, because on any one of these given wicks, they could be, unnatural price action that throws off the entire trend. But the trend line still exists, right? We're seeing a slow upwards trend line that each time EOS touches, it bounces to the upside. It bounces to the upside, right? And we're yet to see a bounce right now. It bounces to the upside there too. So what we're trying to see now, and what we want to see, is a bounce to the upside. And we can ask the question, well, when is this bounce going to come? And what we can do to answer that question is draw yet another trend line. We can try drawing it from here. Okay, it kind of works from there. I'd argue that that's probably the trend you want to draw, right? But you could also be someone who draws it maybe just from these two and connect it a little bit closer. But I would argue that this is the trend line for EOS, right? We have a touch of the wick here in November, and a cut through the wick here in September that touches the first wick in September. So that is the trend on EOS right now. Essentially, we are in a compression pattern, and those of you who watch the channel know that I am a massive fan of trading compression patterns, because compression leads to breakout, right? Explain that so many times. I'll explain it again with the same analogy, because it is a very, very good analogy. If you hold a beach ball under the water, when it comes out, and it inevitably will come out, it will jump out of the water. It will not only come out of the water, but it will jump out of the water. That's what happens with compression trends in price action. So we're waiting for that to happen on EOS. And I would assume that this is actually the last test of the downside here. Now, obviously, if you believe that the market is generally bearish, if you believe that Bitcoin is going to go down, you disagree with me, and hence this analysis is not valid. But under the kind of assumption that Bitcoin is going to go up to new all-time highs, okay, I think that this is the last test of the trend line, and we're probably going to be breaking to the upside here on EOS within a matter of maybe a couple to a few weeks. Okay, so that's good to see. What we see on the Bollinger Bands, for example, is a little bit of a compression starting to happen here. Not too much. We can see the Bollinger Bands edging downwards and the bottom one edging upwards. We can see on the VVPR, and this is why I have these two quite clear boxes here. I have the green box, which is the accumulation range, and the red box, which is the resistance range, okay, critical resistance, because once we break out of this red box, which is at around $5.60, you can see that the VPR is largely trending downwards from that point, which means that it's going to become progressively easier to move up with a haste, right? What happened once we broke this red box back earlier this year? Well, we went from moving very, very slowly to spiking upwards, right? I would expect a very similar thing to happen again if we break that red box. So $5.60 is a critical resistance to watch. If you want it to be very conservative, you can even push that up to around $6.56. But ultimately, I think that the break of the triangle will lead to a break of both of those zones, right? If we do a measured move of this triangle from the first test of the bottom to the first test of the top, and extrapolate that to a breakout point. Let's say we break out on the 15th of December, right? Just for argument's sake, 15th of December. We can see the target for the triangle is at around 10 USD. And so we'll be quite confidently clearing both of those resistance zones. As for the green box, that is the accumulation range. As you can see, during the bear market, we were largely underneath this range and it acted as resistance. And during the bull market, we flipped over this range and it has acted as support on various regions. For example, it acted as support here, it acted as support here, acted as support here as well. And when we drop down, it acts as resistance, right? Resistance, and we had some resistance here and here. So it's pretty vague. It's not exactly the most precise, but it is a good indication of where you should be accumulating and where you should be, planning to take profits or potentially waiting for a further breakout. Now, as for the SMAs, which is the 12, the 26, and the 100, which are the ones I use, which give me a good indication of both the medium and longer term price action on any coin but EOS in this example, we saw that we had this massive compression and it didn't really lead to much. All it led to was a touch of the top of the triangle. And yes, this was somewhat of a failure. However, it did give us an indication that this triangle was actually in play because we didn't have any evidence to suggest we were in a triangular structure. And now that we saw that third retest, because you need 3 data points or 3 sample points for any trend to be valid, okay? Now that we saw that rejection, we saw that third retest, we are now confident that this triangular pattern is now in play and we can be more certain about where the EOS price action is going to go. So realistically, on a longer term scale, we're kind of happy, or at least I am kind of happy, that we didn't actually break out here on EOS, which is good to see. We just saw another retest of the red resistance, which weakens it even further, and we saw a confirmation of this triangular pattern playing out. Now we've scalped the bottom of the triangle, we've also scalped the trend line, which is the bottom of the triangle, and we're also just dipping into our accumulation range and looking to break that to the upside right now. We have various resistance zones within the triangle from the SMAs, and then we also have the triangle resistance that we need to be facing. But this isn't an entry signal. I'm saying that this might be a good point to dip your toes in the water with EOS. Why? Well, pretty simple, okay? Because if we do drop below this triangle, you're risking nothing, right? If we set a stop loss below this triangle right now, you're risking maybe 10%, right? If you want it to be very conservative about it, maybe 10% maximum. What are you standing to gain? Well, just taking into account that $10 move, right? Not even going to new all-time highs. If we just go to $10, right, you're standing to gain 150% for a 10% risk. It's just a no-brainer, right? Even if it doesn't play out, it was still a very, very good probability, a very, very good risk-reward ratio. So it seems like a no-brainer to me. As if you want to buy it now, that's your decision. If you want to wait for a breakout, that's your decision. Wait for a breakout of a critical resistance, that's your decision. Wait for a breakout of $6.60, that's your decision. I wouldn't be waiting any more than that. But the point of this is that it's a very low risk trade, because not only do we have this long-term uptrending support, we also are in an accumulation area on a general basis that has been very good for buying. As you can see on the VVPR, it's not really hard to see, right? Look how much buying pressure we have in this region and below it. So, it's not very hard to see that this is a relatively low risk trade. Now, where it gets complicated is the fact that you might not be a big fan with the EOS fundamentals. You might not be a big fan if it's sliding down the market cap ranking. That's your personal decision. You're going to have to weigh that up in your head yourself. But I'm a trader first and foremost. So from what I see, this is a decent risk reward ratio on a trade. As for the shorter term charts, we can see on the 4 hourly, we're just seeing the same thing we saw on the daily chart, but what we are seeing on the 4 hourly chart is also a bullish divergence, right? We can see a pretty clear bullish divergence from the 17th all the way to now, which is the 30th, and we've been heading upwards on the RSI and heading downwards in the price action, so it looks pretty good there. As for the weekly chart, we can see that, and the reason I want to bring up the weekly chart is because EOS is pretty interesting, first of all, right? It's a pretty interesting mover. it moves very strangely. Okay, we had actually a peak here in the traditional bull market phase in January last cycle, but we also moved up again in May. And look, I don't know what this was caused by. It could have been caused by something that happened fundamentally. Obviously coins do this sometimes, but I'm not going to say we're going to see this again. I think that's a very risky bet. Look, I really should have looked into what actually happened in that time period, but I'm not counting on anything happening like that again. I wouldn't be holding a coin through the bear market hoping that it's going to go to new all-time highs. It's literally a bear market. It's probably the worst time you could possibly do that. I'd be counting on EOS making its all-time high in May. In Q1 in the altcoin season, and hence I'm not really counting this as an all-time high. I'm not really counting 23 as an all-time high because it wasn't made in a bull market. I'm counting the all-time high in EOS at 18 USD, and hence I think we can go above 18 USD for sure. I'm not going to give you a specific price target because my Bitcoin analysis that I used for my Bitcoin prediction that I used for most altcoin price targets is no longer completely valid. So I'm gonna hold off on that, but I think we can definitely go above 18 USD if we do see, and this is the question, if we do see another altcoin season in this cycle. So it looks promising. I wanted to look at what could potentially get us there, and it's pretty clear in my opinion what could potentially get us there. Well, that is the fact that we have a compression on the Bollinger Bands, like most coins, right? If you saw back here, we didn't actually have the Bollinger Bands valid because we weren't around for long enough on EOS, but we would have had a compression here before a move upwards. We had a compression here before a move upwards. We had compression here before a move upwards. We had compression here before a move upwards, and we're having compression right now. Where's that going to go? Probably upwards, right? Probably upwards. If we bring up another indicator like the bull market support band, we can see we're actually suppressed below the bull market support band right now, but this is not to worry because similarly to all these moves we just looked at, when we had a compression below here, when we were compressing, we were below the bull market support band. Here we were below the bull market support band when we were compressing as well, and back here we would have been below it when we were compressing as well. So it's not something too concerning to look at. But if you wanted to wait for a break of the bull market support band, that's going to come at around $4.60. If we go back to the daily chart, breaking this triangular formation would require a break of that region as well. So if you wanted to wait for a break of the triangle, you'd probably be, you'd be flipping the bull market support band as well, and that would be the most conservative entry that you could take, and probably not a bad idea, to be honest. The risk-reward ratio would still be very good at that point. As for the SMAs, they are all compressing into one region. We can see that, for example here, this is really good for EOS. The 100 SMA has acted as such strong support throughout the entire year, right? We had a bounce from it here, a bounce from it here, a bounce from it here, and a bounce from it here. For us not to bounce here after all of that, and plus the trend line, and plus everything else, would be kind of absurd, in my opinion. Could happen. We could see a wick below. We always do wicks, but I don't know. It does seem like a prime location for a bounce. And notice that every time we bounced from the 100 SMA, we were actually below these yellow and pink resistance lines, right? We were below it here, and we went straight above it. We were below it here, and we went straight above it as well. So look, it's definitely interesting to say the least. There is a lot of evidence to support that EOS is on the verge of a move here within the next couple of weeks. As for the MACD on the weekly chart as well, we're primed for a bullish MACD cross on the weekly chart. And I want to look at the daily chart. I didn't bring up the RSI and MACD. That reminds me. We're also primed for a bullish MACD cross on the daily chart, and we're also... Well, there's nothing really too important here on the RSI, but just giving a quick look, we can see that every time we've bottomed out on EOS, we've seen this kind of rounded bottom formation, right? Rounded bottom formation on the RSI. Let's delete the MACD so this is clearer. We saw rounded bottom throughout the entire May to July construction. We saw a rounded bottom in September, and we're seeing a rounded bottom right now, which suggests that the next logical move is to the upside, which is supported by so much at this point. So, it looks quite good. If we delete all of that, we can bring up, finally, the Bitcoin chart, the Bitcoin pair on EOS. And this is another compelling chart for EOS that says it's going to move upwards. And it suggests that, well, we've got a lot of work to do. And the reason being is because we're seeing a double bottom on the EOS chart on the Bitcoin pair at around, let's get it up right now, at around the 666 sat region. We've literally just touched that on a few wicks. And obviously after a double bottom, we're going to move to the upside, right? This is obviously a pretty clear example of a coin that's going to move to the upside on the Bitcoin pair as well. It's not very often that you see a double bottom and you don't continue moving to the upside. The chances of EOS breaking down and making the lowest lows it's ever made versus just having at least a little bounce before the altcoin season and then going parabolic. It seems like EOS, you know, in conjunction with all the stuff we've looked at on the USD pair, is primed for a move here within the next few weeks, as I've said. So look, we look good. As for whether we can take back previous all-time highs on the Bitcoin pair, I don't think it's going to happen, right? EOS is considerably less liked than it was back then. It's considerably less popular. I think we're going to be targeting smaller regions, like for example this red line that I've just placed here around 5,200 sats. I think that's going to be our target for this cycle for the Bitcoin pair, but I don't really do Bitcoin pair targets because they rely way too much on the USD pair, and I don't really have the USD target on EOS as well. I think it can go above its all-time highs on the USD pair. I think it can. I'm not going to say it for certain. What I am certain about is that this is a very, very good trading signal. Even if it doesn't work out, it's a very, very good risk-reward ratio, and EOS looks pretty good right now. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.